Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to go into a little bit more in depth on how to handle narcissistic scapegoating. If you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, there is no doubt you are going to experience scapegoating. Scapegoating is essentially the experience of when a manipulator, someone who has a narcissistic tendency to be driven to feel the need to feel better than, to feel superior than others, and sort of inflated by a grandiosity, meaning they have a sense of entitlement as well that oftentimes is very resistant and stubborn and feels like an emotional wall that you will be snubbed off on. You might even see them turning their nose in the air, holding their head, as if they are, a king or a queen, lacking humbleness, lacking humility, having an excessive amount of pride, just sort of that egoic, just sort of charade, talking their narcissistic talking up what they're going to do, talking about how funny they are, or making self-condescending jokes, which are really meant to be laughed at and taken as a basically a self-promoting concept, meaning they might put themselves down or but it's usually done with a sense of enabling and a sense of like gratuitous self promotion, meaning they'll say, oh, I'm just so too busy to handle this little stuff, and act like they're in irresponsible, but they're really sort of blowing up their ego at the same time. You get this sort of cognitive dissonance, and then you're supposed to laugh and then feel sorry for them, and then there's this sort of sympathetic experience or response that people then give to the narcissist. And then when you're in sympathy with them, you're basically letting your guard down. You're making yourself vulnerable. You're going into that heart space, which might be a strength of yours. But when you really begin to, offer the real shoulder to cry on, the sympathetic ear, you end up listening to them to a lack of imbalance with yourself. And then there is a dependency created in that type of relationship dynamic where I'm your confidant, and then you become defined as special and unique because you're there for them in oftentimes these moments, either where they're insecure or they are looking to you for companionship, and then they develop a little bit of the sort of moving of the plate tectonics, if you will, in the relationship. The foundation begins to change a little bit. It's like you get to have a little bit of earthquakes in the relationship where they're kind of moving sideways and you're kind of moving forward, and things are kind of creaking around, and you're sort of trying to find your common ground. But a narcissist, they don't want that common ground. They don't want that shared experience unless it's with a certain high status other or something that is on that same egoic sort of superficial entitled vibe, if you will. That entitlement, whether they're good looking, usually, you get this entitlement with them. They're good looking. They've, inherited a sum of money. They're maybe very talented at one specific thing. They could be very good looking, and then throw their weight around that way. Just sort of having no problem with taking control and overpowering others. But it becomes, instead of really being like a leader or a positive relationship, it becomes one of exploitation, where it becomes what can they draw out of others, and then the others kind of think, well, eventually, it'll come for full circle, and then our plates will begin to move together and will flow like, gears of the clock. They allow a lot of period of time, and then that doesn't sort of come back full circle. So a lot of people find themselves in very, tolerating a great degree of scapegoating in a relationship, when you're basically just sort of all the blame, all the problems, all the negativity, all the harshness is just sort of thrown at you single-handedly. You might be the only girl, you might be the only manager, you might be the younger one, you might be the older one. Whatever it is, there's generally going to be a quality that is about you, usually that sympathetic side, that wanting for harmony side, that wanting for others not to get hurt side, or why don't we all, share in this and be in ourselves. That sort of idealistic side is sort of like, well, the payback is that, I was here for you. I was your confidant. That made me special and unique. And you find that that didn't make you special and unique. And that sort of dependency, in other words, there's a sort of a dependency when you are with a narcissist and they're requiring some degree of sympathy, meaning their insecurity. They might talk about their looks all the time. Oh no, your hair is great. Oh no, your outfit is fine. Oh no, your shoes. Oh no, your work. Oh no, your family. And you're always sort of you rescue them. You're like the, just coming in on your horse. You're like the knight in shining armor for them. There's something sort of there's a reliance. But the problem then is that with people who are allowing, just sort of feeling dependent and feeling that they're finding their groove with this person, they're then bucked off when they find that those plate tectonics, are pulled way in another direction that doesn't give you the credit for oftentimes giving the sympathy, for being a good person. You're not getting credit for that. It's not being acknowledged. It's not being validated. It's not being valued. It's not being thanked. There's no gratitude. There is no humility. The narcissist is all about their pride and arrogance. And this can cause a great degree of unfriendliness, discourteous behavior, just sort of this absenteeism where they just sort of are gone when you think that they're going to be there. And you're like, we were supposed to be doing this and you're gone 50 to 60% of the time. Why are you gone and then I'm always here? And then finding that slowly but surely you're not, in step with the good stuff. You're not feeling that it's rewarding, that something perhaps is being concealed, that they are zigging when you are zagging, or when you both were zagging, then all of a sudden they're zigzagging themselves out of the picture. They're Houdining themselves away. They're just sort of slithering like the snake, and just sort of, you can't, the untouchable, the uncatchable, they're just sort of, vanish, and then quote unquote, they get away with it. And then a lot of people are like left dumbfounded. How could they get away with this? This is not right. This is unfair. And then your body then goes into overdrive and you're being scapegoated. So the scapegoating means you are blamed oftentimes for a predetermined and premeditated weakness that they have created or set up to you and saying, "See, I told you so." It's like kicking you behind the knees and then saying, "See, I told you you couldn't stand up." It's like, ignoring you and withdrawing their presence, and then they're calling you too needy. In other words, they're shape-shifting, they're gaslighting the terms and foundation of the relationship. Which is to be trust, which is to be, we get each other, we are in an understanding, a commitment, for a lot of people. We have an agreement, it's good for you, it's good for me, there's a win-win. And then there is sort of the setting up of roles, or how you are and how they are. And then, it goes swimmingly. But then but then when they're getting sort of the good out of you and seeing how you're sort of maybe, giving that sympathetic ear, you are the supply for this person. Here, let me fix your fence. Here, let me wash your dog. Here, let me sing a song to your children. You find yourself doing these, seemingly that feels altruistic and loving acts. And, you're there for them. Oftentimes there is sort of this, sympathy or hardship that they have been through, that oftentimes is kind of like how people get involved in the relationship, but then it goes too far. And the narcissist, once you've sort of been there and built them up, you've been there and been there for them, you've built them up, you've got them where they needed, and then, and then you find that they're gone. Then all of a sudden they just get legs and they start walking away, and you're just like wondering, this does not add up. Something is not calculating correctly here. Something is, the lines are out of alignment. You're and especially then when the blame shifting, because the narcissist has always been they always sort of have their eye to the window for the better situation, the better person, the better job, the better time, the better drink, the better where it's going on. There's a lack of loyalty. There's a lack of authenticity. This entitlement makes them just sort of feel like they can just exit and Houdini out at any time. And then when you're stunned, surprised, shocked, bewildered, and holding them accountable, that's when all of a sudden, well, you are, and then you've got this scapegoating. You're wearing, all of a sudden you're saddled up with all this sort of, that you're negligent, you're this, you're that, it's, you're not meeting my expectations. There's all of a sudden this disappointment, or you find that they've been living a double or triple life, that they have been not disclosing to you. And people are shocked and surprised to the degree and extent and depth to which these people can Houdini and shapeshift into a whole nother person and hide it and conceal it. They live in hiding in plain sight. They hide all sorts of stuff. And, you want to get, you have to get to know them. Sure, one important thing is that you do have to keep, when you're healing, you do have to keep some good seeds, for yourself. You have to be able to have some seeds for yourself, because what ends up happening, you end up just sort of, feeding their garden, and you think it's a shared garden, but you're very shocked when you find out that it's all theirs, that you've just sort of felt that you've sort of given yourself away to this person. The scapegoating, though, is oftentimes, a cause and effect that they have caused in you and then blamed you for. So they don't see what they could have done wrong. They don't see how they could have contributed to the hurt. They don't see how they could have contributed to the pain. They don't see how they could have contributed to the lack of trust, or coming to terms and saying sorry where sorry is appropriate. You're not going to hear the word sorry. This is all, to my feeling, part of the scapegoating. If you're not getting sorry after they've hurt you, if they're not apologizing, if they're keeping their pride and arrogance and this sort of smug snobbery, emotional snobbery, and you're not, you have to be able to get that is not adding up, and it's not a good energetic match for you. In other words, you're not an energetic match to someone who is not kind and caring and giving. You're not an energetic match to someone who is prideful and arrogant and a pathological liar. You're not, an energetic match to that. And so, but the scapegoating is, it's back, it's the term scapegoat goes way back when there was, I think in old Israel, in Jewish tradition, where there would be a sacrificial goat, where the people would cast all their sins onto this goat, and they would just, all their sins, all their wrongdoings, all their evils, and they would then pin this to this goat, and it would be then sacrificed, and then they believed that then all their sins would be resolved, through the sacrificing of this asset, this precious goat, that could bring more goats or more milk, so they cast away their sins, and then, this goat. And so that's what the scapegoat, like the origination of that is. And then people then, begin like taking that place. In other words, they're casting all their sins onto you and then blaming you for being sinful, wrong, weak, inadequate, So they're casting all their ills onto you and then saying, look, you're ill. It's like, you're wearing their shirt and they go, look, you're wearing my shirt. As if, and it's like, what? There's a sense of unreality. There's a sense of stun, how you feel resourceless. You can't communicate back. People then shut down. I don't know how to deal with this. I've just fought myself into a corner. I've just fought myself into a frenzy. I've just, you can basically then, it's very difficult to come back, have a comeback, and then just deal with it right there on the spot, because it's like a deer in headlights. You just don't expect this coming at this time, at this moment. It's just it's just glaringly hurtful, and you don't really have the resources and knowledge to know how to handle it. It's like being in a field and saying, cross those mountains, and you don't have a map, and you're just like, where do I go from here? Like, I have not done this before. I don't know how to do this before. Like, you just haven't encountered it, and you don't have the skill set for how to do it. It's like looking at a shoe before you learned how to tie it and not knowing how to tie it. You just haven't been taught. You don't know what you're dealing with here. So people then, allow a lot of this negativity to just take up house in them, just to take up, take up like an internal geranium, and just those seeds are growing, and you're growing these negative seeds. You're feeling, and guilty, miserable, crying, sad, angry. Oftentimes, you're difficult to think, difficult to keep a routine, difficult to keep a job, difficult to keep a thought going, an emotion going that's anywhere near productive. And you don't have anyone to have a checks and balances with. There is no mediator. And so it can get just really, the suffering can be excessive. And so the scapegoating, once again, is a defense mechanism of a narcissist who does not want to take responsibility for their inadequacies or their humanness. So we've said before, the narcissists, they don't like to feel equal. They don't like to feel, a certain degree of sameness, unless it's on that sort of entitlement, and we're talking arrogance, and we're all snubbery, and we're all, the CE of, or, the CIO, the CEO. This is for the narcissist, not all CEOs. You can have a lot of wonderful and humble and approachable, authentic CEOs, CIOs, business owners, etc. We're talking about when you encounter true narcissism, and you just see it in its flaming form, and so they don't like to just be able to come down to earth, if you will. That feeling alarms them. That feeling scares them. That feeling is like suffocating to them, because they have never dealt with their own insecurities. They are all about, how can I make the mask bigger? How can I make the mask heavier? How can I make it more believable? How can I make it bigger, brighter, faster, stronger, and get more egoic supply, attention, adulation, and acknowledgement for me? And meanwhile, everybody else is in the dark. They want to be in that spotlight. It's just where, and they don't, so the scapegoating is because they don't like to be called out, held accountable for certain wrongdoings, i.e. telling the truth, i.e. being honest, i.e. telling you how it really was, i.e. telling you how it really is. Everybody, doesn't spill the beans on everything, but really we're talking to an extensive and excessive and problematic degree. Where's the mortgage? Where's the mortgage? You find that you're 4 months late, and you find out that they've been, the mortgage is going for, another house that they now have with another, affair. I mean, it's just stuff like this, where this just rerouted complete connection, and they don't feel accountable or the need to share this with you. The fact that they're, and so they don't like to feel humble. So just as being present, as, I'm stepping down off of my cloud 59 and I'm right here on earth with you all. I am a human. They feel more human than human. They feel, superior. They, literally, figuratively, physiologically, this is what's running in their system, their central nervous system, their parasympathetic nervous system, how they behave. It's largely involuntary for them. So, and then the scapegoating, though, is then when they're sort of attributing all these problems, well, you didn't give me a chance, you weren't open, and it's really, there's no I'm sorry, there's no just sort of, at least where we can work with something at that level, at least if it makes sense, then it's a little bit easier to see how this, this here, this was where I fell short, this is where we, and then just, but it's like lopsided. I mean, if you were on a seesaw, you would be, the one hitting the ground and not going anywhere. It's just because they're all the way up, and that's just, they cannot make the connection otherwise. And so the scapegoating is where you've been sort of hung a label on, kicked when you're down, made to feel, not given the opportunity, not giving the communication, not giving the respect, not giving the credit where credit is due. If you don't give, the narcissist, they want to be the receiver of all the compliments. They want that sort of sycophantic flattery. They can live, breathe, and appears to be very sustainable, but that's not a very sustainable or pleasurable place to live and operate in, and it's just not feasible. It's just not how life goes. That's not the fabric of their being. They don't want to be fake. They don't want to be frivolous. They don't want to be condescending to others. They don't want to live in that superiority mindset. They don't even want to wear it for an hour. They don't like that, judgment and criticism where they're, making jokes at the expense of others or whatever it is, self-talking themselves up. They don't want to live in that lie. They just choose not to. But it's, the scapegoating then is when you're not given also, it's the overt scapegoating where they're blaming, saying that you're the wrong and that you and they're just moving on. They don't even give you a chance to, bring your side up, or you just don't even have an opportunity. It's just, they're gone. They just check out and they've just sort of leave you high and dry, or with all these sort of false accusations that they dump on you and that are really, they're part of the problem, and they don't ever take ownership. They're inaccountable. And so also, I feel that that's also a very covert way of scapegoating somebody, that, withholding of communication, just sort of not keying you in, not cluing you in, disrespect, emotional disrespect. Like, in other words, you're too, I'm not going to give you the opportunity or credit for being yourself. So it's a double whammy. In other words, if they don't give you credit for your positive, it's as if it didn't exist at all. And you're saying, but I did this and this and this, and you're just acting like that never occurred. So you've got this sort of gaslighting and brainwashing and cognitive dissonance that's very difficult, and you can't, they're not there to work it through. So it's like you're kind of going away with all this sort of problematic and blame that is not yours to begin with, but you're just left holding the big bin. It's like, just, take the bin outside and drop it off and just, wash your hands and just, I'm not carrying that bin anymore. The scapegoating, not only is it, obvious, once you really look at it and separate it and begin to understand, but there's also the insidious scapegoating where they don't give you credit for your positive, and it's just like, it just is not validated, it is not valued, even though they take value from it, they won't give you credit. And so that's also, I feel, a big part of the scapegoating problem in a narcissistic relationship. They're not even, giving gratitude for your very being sacrificed. And so you feel truly like a sacrifice, that you've made this sacrifice in the relationship, but yet it's really to show you the true value for which you are. In other words, They're taking the value, and so they really value more than words can say. If you can look at it and understand it that way, for them to select you, it shows you that, bad things happen to good people because you had the good to be, to be given. So even though they didn't acknowledge and validate your value, you have to know that it is there. You really have to know that, and you have to be able to see and own your value and not just continue to carry that on. You literally have to voluntarily say, I'm not carrying all that blame, all that, just heavy gunk that tends to be like an emotional residue of depression that you didn't know how to deal with. And so it just picks up and gets even more fungus, even more funk. And, people are just emotionally, hung over from from this relationship. It's so toxic. So the hangover will you have to process it out of your system. Don't be tempted to go back to the toxicity if that's your drug. Don't go back. Realize it's not healthy for you, and that can help you to realize that you don't want to be that self-sacrificing. Been there and done that. So now you're going to really live in a feeling of value and self-respect, and really just really cultivate that and become aware of it and conscious of that, and that you're responsible for all areas of your life, and get that sort of eyes wide open feel that, hey, I'm responsible for all areas. And that's a feel good, because that means someone, isn't responsible for derailing you emotionally. The levers, the driving, the gears are in your hands. So take the health into your hands. Take that emotional health into your hands and own it, and feel a little bit good about it. Feel, feel humbleness that you have this power, and acknowledge that you have the power. And so you have to be willing to give yourself the value and give it back to yourself that oftentimes was sort of leached and, vampired or Houdini'd away from the narcissist. Begin to acknowledge and validate it, and sort of allow those seedlings to pop up again and allow them to flourish within, but keep those good seeds sort of hidden. Keep them nurtured a little bit. Keep them, put a little bit of a wire fence around, even when you go about, so that you're sort of able to see and observe, and you're not sort of falling prey to the junk thoughts, or the self-blame, or getting sort of held back by the stalemate and stalking behavior, these stalemate and sort of stalemate behaviors where you're not changing. You need to be able to take care of yourself. Stretch emotionally, be able to do the positive, surround yourself with positive situations and people who speak your language, who are not out to manipulate, target, and leave you without, and you need to have that self-esteem now, because and not going about relationships in the same way. So when the negative starts, it'll bounce off. It will not penetrate you, because you've done the healing, you've done the work, you've gotten that strong core. And so when you see that, and what's better is your life will begin to improve when you work on your astromations. If you need to work on your astromations, your I am statements, and you really need to work on those 2 times a day, and things will start to change in the positive direction. Your behavior will begin to guide your principles, so it'll be like autonomic suggestion, where involuntarily you'll just begin doing the right things. You'll begin, changing your finances. You'll begin straightening out your garage. You'll be getting that job. You'll be looking for new relationships. You'll be eating healthier. You'll be earning more money. You'll be, feeling better about yourself. You'll be getting rid of the old habits, the old mindset. You'll begin doing, reading the right things, listening to the right things, listening to things that educate and inform, that help you to improve yourself from the inside out. You will no longer take the scapegoating. It will no longer be hung on you. You will no longer be that open sacrifice for that, to be embedded in. You're ridding yourself of that consciousness, and you're becoming aware once it's infused, once you're developing that consciousness, you're able to see, when those moments had occurred, but you're acting completely differently now because you're changed. And not absorbing of those tools, of those manipulation tactics that the narcissist will use to implore others as a scapegoat. You are completely an energetic mismatch to that, and own that. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day. Take care of yourself.